Good morning, and thank you for joining me on the path to liberty. I'm Michael Bolden with the 10th Amendment Center, and this is the Fast Friday edition of the show for May 5th, 2023. And on Wednesday, I did my second episode recently on states pushing back against the central bank digital currency, CBDC. Wednesday's show was primarily about a new Florida measure that was passed by the legislature there to remove CBDCs from the definition of money in the state, basically banning in practice and effect its use as such. Now, in response, I've been contacted by a bunch of people, and I've seen some activists posting online talking about bills in Louisiana and another one that was signed as law in North Dakota that would supposedly eliminate the use and application of a CBDC in the state. So today I want to give a quick overview of that legislation and explain why that is absolutely not the case. And it's important to get this right, because if you think it's banning a CBDC as money, and it's definitely not doing that, you're probably not taking the activism steps to try to get that thing done. Now, if you think what I'm saying is absolutely dumb, boring, doesn't make sense, just jump towards the end of the episode. I am definitely going to be quoting the sponsor saying pretty much the same. Now, first of all, let's kick it off with the legislation in question in North Dakota. I think the bill in Louisiana is probably exactly the same. It's a very short piece of legislation signed as law April 20th-ish. Senate Bill 2392 signed by the governor in North Dakota goes into effect on August 1st. It's really straightforward. It just, that's positive. Now, I'm not saying the legislation is bad. I just don't think it's doing what a lot of people are thinking it does. Not everybody. It amends Article 9 of the Uniform Commercial Code, UCC, to change the definition of a deposit account. A deposit account, which currently means a demand, time, savings, passbook, or similar account maintained with a bank. So basically stuff that you put on account at a bank. That's counted as a deposit account. But now they're adding to that to say the term does not include a United States central bank digital currency. So a CBDC is not a deposit account, according to the UCC in North Dakota, signed as law in April, going into effect in August. Now, a conservative organization and a bunch of activists have been kind of, these guys didn't reach out to me, but maybe this is where it comes from. North Dakota CAN started putting out this message in support of the legislation. They say, if implemented by the federal government, a central bank digital currency would be considered a deposit account. Amending the definition of a deposit account to exclude a CBDC would eliminate its use and application in North Dakota. So the assumption here that creates the entire flawed view here is that a CBDC is deposited somewhere, maybe like a bank or at the Federal Reserve. Now, maybe they're thinking of it like this. You know, it's electronic money. You can't hold it in your hand. You can't see it. You can't feel it. It's digital, right? So it has to be stored somewhere, though. This is kind of the thinking of what we do now, even though many times we never see the U.S. fiat paper money that we have because it's in a bank. We use debit cards, credit cards, and money is being transferred. We never touch it or see it in a vast majority of people's transactions. They think that even with a central bank digital currency, it has to play out the same. You need an intermediary like a bank. So some people are under the impression that this digital fiat is going to be stored in banks like we do with credit cards. And then you're going to have tap to pay. And then maybe we'll have individual accounts with the Federal Reserve if they're getting rid of all the small banks and consolidation. And I think that seems to be what North Dakota CAN and maybe some other people are thinking about this piece of legislation. Here they are in a social media post highlighting SB 2392 was signed into law today. This is from April 21st. Maybe I have the date wrong. They say this is helpful because if implemented by the federal government, a central bank digital currency would be considered a deposit account. I'm not sure where they get this because CBDCs are not deposited into an account and then accessed, and then the money is sent from one account to another. I'll get to that in just a moment. They say amending the definition of a deposit account to exclude a CBDC would eliminate its use and application in North Dakota. Eliminate its use North Dakota. I'm not sure if I said North Carolina or not. So this is a fundamental misunderstanding of digital currency in general and a potential CBDC more specifically, and of course, of CBDCs already running as pilot programs or full-fledged ones. First of all, digital currency is not held at banks. Instead, banks aren't even needed in this whole scenario, really. And instead, and in hearings on this legislation, Senate Bill 2392, the bank organizations came out and were clearly stating over and over and over, our organization, small banks, independent banks, we are absolutely opposed to a CBDC. They didn't say it's because the banks aren't needed, but maybe there's something to that. Here, Finextra describes things like this. They say a CBDC wallet secured by the central bank will allow them to store and make deposits in the national digital currency without intermediaries. So they print the digital money, they send it directly to you, it sits in your wallet. When you want to make a transaction, you go and you maybe tap your phone at a register at a store, and then while that's happening, in a split second, it sends the transaction information of what you are and who they are to verify that that's probably the central bank acting as the validator. And then they say, okay, this is okay. And then it gets deposited. A transaction approved. Think of how a credit card transaction goes. It's a little bit slower, but you go to a store and you swipe your card and maybe a couple seconds later it says bing, bing, approved. Or, well, hopefully it says approved. But there are different types of digital wallets for different use cases. You can have, again, an app on your phone. You can have a hardware wallet that looks like a small thumb drive. The most advanced CBDC is in China. The People's Bank of China have already created eCNY, and they have an app available for it that just goes on your phone. Here I've got a link to it, which I will post in the show notes section. I publish a blog post about 1 to 2 hours after the live stream is done. And in that, you'll see it's at 10thamendmentcenter.com/path-to-liberty. I'll include a show link section. I will link to this Apple App Store link as well to the eCNY app. And I'm sure this is not the #1 place that people in China get this, but here from TechCrunch, this report was January 2022, so keep that in mind when you hear these numbers. They say one of the fastest growing apps in China right now by installs is the central bank's digital yuan wallet. 261 million individual users, about 1/5 of the population. 261 individual central bank digital currency wallets have been set up, and 87.5 billion yuan, almost 14 billion US worth of transactions has been made using the digital fiat currency. So 261 million people. Now, again, this wallet app is not a bank account. It's not a deposit account. And if they do the same approach as the People's Bank of China is doing at the Federal Reserve System, if they ever launch something like this, it's not held anywhere but in your wallet. It's not a deposit. And therefore, the North Dakota law that supposedly bans CBDCs doesn't even apply because it's not something that's held at a bank, which is exactly what a deposit account in the definition of UCC is addressing. And that's the only thing they're addressing in this legislation. They're removing CBDC from the definition of a deposit account, which is something, quote, maintained with a bank. So Deutsche Bank has a pretty good analysis of China's CBDC. And it could be implemented differently here, but let's use them as an example. They say the People's Bank of China, PBOC, chose to define eCNY as cash in circulation, or as M0, or I'm not sure if it's M0 or MO. I think it's M0 in the language of central banks. Defining eCNY that way, rather than as M1 or M2 money supply, has a number of implications. I will link to this in the show notes so you can read all of it. But one of the implications is the digital wallets that hold the central bank digital currency will not be considered bank accounts. The pilot program so far only requires a mobile number to have an eCNY wallet. So the current situation is you get your CBDC, it goes right to your wallet. It's not in a bank. It's not a deposit account of any kind. So the use is not even restricted under the law passed in North Dakota. And that's what the sponsor said, and I'll get to that in just a moment. The Bank of Jamaica, in their central bank digital currency approach has the same mentality. They say CBDC is not held in a bank account. It is held in a CBDC wallet that is issued by banks or authorized by payment service providers. So they can see what's in the wallet. They can monitor what you do with that wallet. They can maybe control your ability to use that wallet, but you're storing the stuff in your wallet, not at a bank. So you might be asking then, well, what about merchants? What about stores? They got to store their money too. They're going to just keep it in some local wallet? No, they're going to go deposit in a bank. But it really is pretty much the same on their end. If you're thinking again, tap to pay, they just have a wallet on their side, and you can store an unlimited amount of a single digital currency in a single wallet, even if it's not good security to do that. It really isn't if you have large amounts. Now, for large firms, there are third-party security solutions, none of which are banks either. They're usually considered licensed money transmitters. Congressional Research Service points out that licensed money transmitters are definitely not banks. They say, unlike traditional banks or financial institutions, money transmitters do not accept deposits or make loans, but provide alternative mechanisms for people to make payments or obtain money. A good example is PayPal. And I'm not sure how far along PayPal is with digital currencies. I know they have waded into that realm. Maybe somebody else knows that better, but they have 2 licenses in North Dakota already, one under the Money Transmitters Act or another under the Money Brokers Act. Neither of them, they're not licensed as a bank, but you could do business completely with PayPal. And so there could be an institution that is basically the same, but for digital currencies. Or maybe you don't even need that at all. You just have to have the Federal Reserve System having the ability to validate that transaction electronically between your wallet on your phone and their wallet register app that they have on their iPad or their phone. And you don't even need the bank or the PayPal or anybody else. Now, maybe they decide to go with third-party organizations like Coinbase, which is a cryptocurrency, a digital currency business, which also has a license in North Dakota under the transmitter license. They're a North Dakota money transmitter. They are not a bank, but you can store lots of crypto in North Dakota and use it and transfer it to people. Again, the North Dakota law that was just passed doesn't address any of this. Again, without getting all the details of the various possible solutions, the bottom line is you don't need a bank to hold a central bank digital currency. Now, again, you might be asking, if I don't have a Federal Reserve bank account and I don't have another bank account where my money is stored, what are they doing? What's the negative? How they can control this? Because our great concern, of course, is that A, they're monitoring us, and then B, they can cut off transactions. If you've got a social credit score tied to it, that can be really dangerous. First of all, it's surveillance, because if there is someone validating those transactions, and if it's the Federal Reserve System or someone connected to it, then they have all that information. They know exactly what's going on. Here from payments.com, they say, for example, digital yuan transactions are not recorded on a blockchain, especially not a decentralized one. It's totally centralized, and the People's Bank of China retains full access to transaction data and can theoretically even cancel or revert transactions. I'm not sure if they're actively doing this, but already just with that description, it is a total tool of surveillance, the capability to monitor every single transaction. We're not even getting into automatic tax deductions or limiting how long you can keep the funds without it being devalued over time. We're not even getting into that. So one way that they can actually control your spending, if you want to take it to the next level, which we know government always does want to do that, is by associating your wallet through KYC, Know Your Customer, and AML, anti-money laundering laws that were strengthened significantly after passage of the Patriot Act to supposedly protect us from terrorists. They can associate your wallet with you as a person. So if you have to provide information to verify who you are in order to use that wallet, now they're saying so far just a phone number to get the wallet in China, but it'd be pretty easy to add KYC to that, and maybe they already have since the time of that article. But certainly if they're associating the wallet with you as a person, like an IP address, when you try to send some of your digital currency or central bank digital currency to another person or to a business, if it's a centralized payment validation system, that centralized system can blacklist your wallet and deny the transaction or deny the transaction type. You still hold the coins. You still hold the central bank digital currency. It's not at a bank. You just can't use them. So the more that I look at this legislation in North Dakota, the more that I think that bills like this, just saying that a deposit account does not include a central bank digital currency, the more that I think it's not going to have much of an impact on a CBDC, if at all. And I have a link here to one of the two larger, maybe there was more, but I listened to two hearings, one on the state Senate side, another one on the state House side. This is the latter one on April 11th, where the sponsor, Senator Paulson, was asked, hey, if we're going to do this, are we limiting the choice of residents of North Dakota to use a CBDC? And here's the quote, and I will link to this. It's linked to the section where they ask a question like within the next minute of this point in the video. I couldn't get it exact based on the North Dakota legislative system, but basically he was asked, Senator Paulson was asked, hey, are we limiting the choice? And he said this, quote, any North Dakotan that desires to use a CBDC for their own transactions would be absolutely able to do so. So if you want to hear it in his own voice, just play that video. I will link to it in the show notes. And if what they're saying is we're passing this legislation and anyone who wants to can still use a CBDC, I'm trying to figure out what is this doing vis-a-vis a central bank digital currency. Maybe it's making it so if you store the money in a bank, the bank can't use it as collateral for lending. But I don't think that's how it's going to work in practice. I don't think they're going to be doing that kind of thing. They're not going to need it for that. Now, of course, commercial banks, I think, will still exist. But really, when it comes to this central bank digital currency and the dangers of it, it's not the dangers of keeping it in a bank and the bank shutting you off, because they can already do that. We've seen all kinds of people canceled from payment rails in the current system as is. Well, anyways, this is important stuff. I hope it wasn't too boring. I hope it was at least interesting and educational. I really appreciate you being here. Of course, if you want to help us get this kind of information out to more people and effective solutions on what to do, well, we're working on them. I'm not sure what's going to be effective, but we're really trying to stick our neck out and push forward on this. You can support us for as little as $2 a month. Throw that dirty government fiat our way, and we will take a stand for the Constitution and liberty, whether they like it or not. Join us over at 10thamendmentcenter.com/members. Again, I appreciate you being here. I hope you enjoyed the episode. Hope you have a great weekend, and I hope to see you next week here on the path to liberty.